All right. Well, thanks. This is a nice turnout tonight. Appreciate everybody coming out. As Bob said, I'm an aquatic biologist for the state of Pennsylvania for DEP. I'm also I love fly fishing, love fly tying. So my hobbies and my work details are sort of mishmashed a lot of times. But tonight I'm going to talk about just different macroinvertebrates or aquatic insects that you'll see, around the streams around here or in Pennsylvania in general, and kind of like what they are, how they mix up with scientific names as opposed to common names that fishermen use, and then try to I have a lot of pictures of actual flies that I tied to match the hatches and stuff. So, and like I said, you can interrupt at any time. But yeah, this is just some ramblings from myself, who spent way too many years under a microscope. I've been a biologist for 31 years, and before that, I got my master's degree in aquatic biology. So, been doing it for a while now. All right. So, you know what? I can't see that screen at all. There we go.
I'm going to turn out maybe a floodlight.
I'm like getting a huge one. There we go. That'll work. Perfect. All right. So what's a benthic macroinvertebrate? So that's an aquatic animal that doesn't have a backbone. So they can spend their entire lives in the water, or they're like a lot of the aquatic insects, they're only present in water during the larvae and adult stage, or larvae and juvenile stage, and then they would, what we call, hatch out into adults. So like the major groups of benthic macroinvertebrates, and my second favorite thing in the world is, or my second favorite thing in the world besides my bird dogs, is freshwater mussels. And we do, for my job, we do a lot of freshwater mussel surveys, and we dive looking for mussels around here. And just as an aside, right here, this stream right here has probably some of the best freshwater mussel populations in the entire world. In fact, two species that live right here within feet of us, the highest populations in the world, occur right here: the northern riffle-shell mussel and the club-shell mussel. So this one, that one right there is club-shell, and that's a bunch of northern riffle-shell mussels. So yeah, it's we're extremely fortunate just with the aquatic diversity that we have in this part of the state. Oh, and so other groups, I got sidetracked on mussels. I could talk for mussels forever. Clams, snails, and then crustaceans, which are like, your scuds and your freshwater shrimp that you would tie, more so in limestone streams if you're fishing, and then crayfish. And then what I'm going to talk about tonight, though, are basically the aquatic insects. So just in the field of entomology, there's the major orders, and this is like the estimated number of species in North America. And you can see the three big ones that everybody, most fly fishermen think about are the mayflies, or the ephemeroptera, the stoneflies, the Plecoptera, or the caddisflies, or the Trichoptera. So you see the amount of species, or 700 species of mayflies in North America, 1,200 species of caddisflies, and 500 species of stoneflies. And these right here on the right, those are some stoneflies in the family Chloropyralidae. So yeah, so in Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania estimates, extremely diverse. Pennsylvania has a lot of different topography. You go to the middle of the state, you get the limestone. You got the Atlantic slope over in the eastern part of the state, and then northwest PA, were all the glaciated areas. So yeah, a pretty big diversity of mayflies, stoneflies, and caddisflies. Especially incredible is the amount of species of the caddisfly, or Trichoptera. 320 species in Pennsylvania, representing 21 families. So yeah, lots of them out there. So to get good at identifying aquatic insects, I mean, you don't need a $15,000 scope with a camera on it. somebody can get pretty good, with a hand lens and all that, but there's a lot of terms, and most of the insects that you would ID, down to genus and definitely to species level, would be, you'd have to use dichotomous keys in probably a scope. And the terms are it's just crazy. I still see new terms of different parts. And so the picture on the right, and I know you can't see it, but like when we're talking about the mayflies or Ephemeroptera, they call the first three sections of the mayfly. They have the head, the pro, meso, and metanotum. But if you're looking at a caddisfly, they call it the pro, meso, and metathorax. So it's all these terms are just intertwined, and it takes a long time to get used to it. And so again, we use dichotomous keys, and does everybody know what a dichotomous key is? So you basically have, the head is wide or the head is not wide, and then it takes you to a second couplet, and you just keep going down through. It gives you two choices, keep going through and through until you can figure out, it takes you down to the family or genus or species level, whatever you want to do. But there's a lot of terms to learn. One of the biggest caddisfly books is one of the biggest caddisfly books is Rich Merritt's. He's done 5 editions now, and it's about this thick at this point. I mean, it's a behemoth of a book. So in terms of like scientific nomenclature, like most of us that do this for a living, I mean, we use Latin, but most fishermen don't use Latin. They use, more common terms. But that gets, it can be really confusing to fly fishermen sometimes, using common terms. It's even confusing to me. And just some examples are like, when everybody thinks of blue-winged olives, what do they think of? And I think of a Baetis, mayfly. They say, oh, it's the Baetis hatch. Well, that's a blue-winged olive. But also, there's another big hatch in P8, the Drunella, which is an Ephemerellidae. That's a completely different family of mayflies. Those come off also. There's another one, Atenella, which is also called the blue-winged olive. And then Pseudocleon, which is another beta that comes off, and that's called a blue-winged olive. And then you go out west, and a blue-winged olive is something completely different. I found that out when I fished in Montana and stuff. So it can be very difficult. And then you have the blue-winged olive and the blue dun, which is another family of mayflies, and the blue quill, which is another genus in that same family, and the blue Hendrickson, which is another family. And then the sulfurs, people just think of sulfurs, but that's like 5 or 6 different genuses that come off from like May through the summer. So it can get very confusing. McCafferty has an excellent book. It's basically, I think it's an entomologist's guide to, and I think I have it up. I have a picture of that book, but at the end of the book, there's 11 pages of this is the scientific name and this is the fisherman's name, and he has them all mixed match for eastern and western species. So it's kind of interesting to look at that, and it can give you a little bit of guidance. And there's always, like I said, difficulty in identifying stuff streamside. I mean, these two stoneflies. They actually look, fairly similar if you're just looking at them, especially if they're small. They can be very difficult. And without really getting them under a microscope, you certainly aren't going to get them to genus, but you can get them to family. This is a Perlidae on the right, and that's a Perlotidae on the left. With all that being said, and this is my daughter, she's a pretty good fly fisherman herself. The average fisherman can get pretty good at identifying, and I know a lot of people that I fish with that have no entomology background, and they're pretty darn good at naming stuff. But if you ever see the guy that's picking out stuff, or female that's picking out stuff from 50 yards away and naming genus species, he doesn't know what he's talking about. All right. So yeah, here, the amount of resources nowadays is just phenomenal. Of course, AI, just Google it. You can Google anything, and troutnut.com, there's lots of them like that have just incredible pictures and can really, really help you. This is the book I was talking about, the Aquatic Entomology book, which is a really one of my favorite books. If you were just a casual, like wanting to know what was on, in the stream, and then match it up with the common name of those things. But yeah, there's so many different resources out there nowadays that if you really want to get into it, you could. Just a little bit about aquatic insect lifestyles. I thought this was I pulled this one off of the internet somewhere, but the caddis life cycle series, and you see how that's a caddisfly, how it goes from pupa, and then it goes through the various, most insects go through 5 or 6 what's called instars, or just different developmental stages, and then it goes into a pupal stage, and then you can see it hatching out into adult there. And a lot of these insects, different orders of insects, have different ways of doing it. So on the top, you have mayflies, which live as nymphs. Then they come up to the surface and they emerge, and that first emergence is called the sub-imago stage, or what fishermen say, it's a dun. And real dark wings, they go up, fly in a tree, molt a second time, and they're the only ones that do this, the mayflies. And then their wings clear up, they harden up, and then they come back down to mate, and that's called the imago stage, or they call it spinner. Fishermen do. And there's the spent spinner that after it mates, it dies, and that's it. Caddisflies do it fairly similar. They come up, but they do have a pupal stage, caddisflies, and sometimes that pupal stage can be in their case or under a rock or somewhere. Then they emerge as adults, and then the adults lay their eggs. Stoneflies are more crawlers. They come out and they crawl up on the shoreline, and then they mate, and sometimes they'll near vegetation on the stream, and then they come up. And then midges are the more similar to caddisflies in that regard. So here's an example of, this is Ephemerella silveria. So I saw these last Friday on Oil Creek. They're more of an late April emerger. And so you can see on the left, or on the right, that's the dun. So you see the dark wings and softer body, and then that would be the sub-imago stage, and then you have the imago stage after they molt a second time up in the trees or under vegetation. They get those clear wings, and now they're ready to mate at that point.
Hey, Joe?
Yeah.
Quick question on cats.
Yeah.
When they hatch, they come back and lay eggs. Do some of them actually lay eggs on surface versus underneath? Both?
Some of them will lay on surface. Others will dive under,
right,
and actually hit, go on rocks and do that. So yeah, different. Yeah, they'll do different.
Is that by species, or is it?
Probably, I would say yes.
Mm-hmm.
Probably family more.
Okay.
Certain families will, but yeah, some of them will. And how they even come up is different. Some of them might crawl to the edge. Others might come up in a gas bubble,
yeah,
and just pop up. Black flies do that. They come up on a little gas bubble and pop up, and then.
Well, spontaneous patterns like that.
Yeah, right. Yep. Yes, right. Exactly. Yep. Okay. So when trying to figure out what's coming off, every time when I'm fishing, especially this time of year and on, I'm always looking in spider webs and underneath vegetation, or looking at rocks right next to the surface. That gives you, some good clues on what hatches you might have missed, or which things are probably coming off. So yeah, it's always good to look around the rocks and see different things, and you get an example. So yeah, look at spider webs under leaves and branches. Look at the exuvia, or the exoskeleton. So you see these stoneflies, they basically crawled up onto a rock, and then they break that exoskeleton and they hatch right out. That's a good example of a mayfly doing this. And a couple pictures. So I'm going to go back and forth, but I'll talk about a lot of the major hatches that we would see in northwestern PA, north central PA, and all that. So obviously the first one is the Capnidae. Everybody calls these the little black stones or the winter stoneflies. You'll see them crawling around if you see a decent sunny day in the middle of winter. And you're like, what the heck are all these little black things crawling around in the snow next to the stream? Well, that's what these guys are. These are the winter stoneflies. They're fairly small. You can see my imitations with a little bit of flash on them. Those are what I would, tie for little black stones. You can also tie them with no flash on them, but I'm not much of a purist, so I like to always put some flash on some stuff. Tony's good at that too.
How will you fish those? No.
Just nymphing.
Just dead drift?
Dead drifting.
No action? Or?
No, just
Okay.
nymphing them. Yeah. And these are a great steelhead pattern. If you get a decent warm day and you see a bunch of these on the water and you're not taking them on eggs, fish this thing. I mean, my whole day has changed sometimes. Or put an egg and underneath put a black stone. Get the egg to drop and then the black stone's kind of like up more, and that works really good. Two of the major, or actually the only genera. So we know how. I guess I didn't go through, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. So basically I'm talking about orders. So when I say Ephemeroptera, that's a mayfly, but then there's lots of families, and then you got the genera. So these are two of the genuses in Pennsylvania. There's many species in these two genera, but you have the Paracapnia and the Allocapnia. This one, the big one right here in the middle, is Allocapnia. The difference between those two is they have those rounded wing pads, whereas Paracapnia would have more straight rounded, not expanding out wing pads more. So that's the difference between those. You can actually, if they don't have the wings on them, you can actually see those with the naked eye. And this was a day steelhead fishing, and so if I see that. This was like in January or something. I'm like, man, I'm putting on a stonefly, and let's see if this works. I don't know what to hit on that. It's supposed to be a video.
You might have to hit it on the computer. I don't know.
I don't want to mess the whole thing up. What if I hit it again?
Oh, there you go. Yeah, it is a double clicker.
Yeah. So you can see some of them have wings on them, and some of them don't, and that's typical. I never see these things flying. Like, I don't even know why they have wings, but I don't see them flying. And you'll see them in various stages of wing development. So then, as that's basically all you're going to see. Maybe some midges and stuff coming off January, February. You get into February, March, and here's the next stonefly that's going to come off. These are what we call the spring stoneflies, or the Capnidae with the little black stones. These are black stones. I don't know. Is there any other? I think that's all we call them. And try to take these on top. These ones fly, and I saw some of these on Friday actually on Oil Creek. Mixed up with some granum caddis, and they're a lot larger than the Capnidae. More size, I'd say 12 to 16, probably 14, 16 more, maybe 12 sometimes. They're pretty good sized stonefly, and I like to fish a dry dropper with these ones, and so you can put even a little black stone or a stonefly underneath, and then put the dropper on top, and so this is kind of like the first exciting hatch because the water's getting a little warmer, and so we're starting to see these. There's 5 genera in PA. Most of the ones I see in our samples for work are the Taniopteryx and the Strophopteryx. Taniopteryx are the only ones that have, you can see right here, they have, you see those little white things? That's a gill coming out of each leg. So Taniopteryx, that genus, is the only one that has those. And Strophopteryx has a little plate at the back of the abdomen. It's this little triangular plate, and that's how you take that that one down to the genus level. The other ones, Veloptera, Tanionema, and Omopteryx, I don't see very often. They're more cold water, small stream type of species, or type of genuses. I'll see them occasionally, but not in the numbers that you would Taniopteryx or Strophopteryx. And then there's my stonefly pattern up there. How you think, Warren? Pretty good?
Good to me.
They float good, so
Yeah.
I'll stick a dropper on behind that, and they seem to work. And then, so then one of the most common and diverse mayflies as a group, as a taxonomist, they're so diverse and numerous, are the family Betidae, which is the mayfly. Probably one of the first, you'll see these guys come off, especially down in central PA. If you get a nice warm day in February, you can have a heck of a blueing olive hatch. And so we call these blueing olives or betids or Betidae, or BWOs. These guys are, the nymphs are really small, size 16 to 22. And they're a multivoltine species. Okay, so that means most insects in PA are univoltine, which means they only go through one life cycle per year. These guys can go through multiple life cycles in a year. Black flies are really known for that. Black flies are very multivoltine. They can go from egg to adult in a couple weeks in the summertime. So these guys are multivoltine. And so my tip to those is, I've tied these in 22s and 24s before even kids. Some of these are really small, these blueing olives, but there's a wide range because there's a lot of species and a lot of different genera. Those genera that I just put there, Betis, Acentrella, Diphyter, and Plaudittus, those are the most common ones, I would say. You'll see in streams, but there are so many and there's so many species, so you'll get a lot of variation of what they look like and all that. So the nymphs, one other thing, depending on the genus, the nymphs, there's always a rule of thumb with fishermen that mayflies are always three-tailed and stoneflies are always two-tailed. Well, that's not always true. It's true most of the time, but it's not true all the time. So yeah. So depending on the genus, the nymphs will be either two or three-tailed. Acentrella is always a two-tailed. Diphyter is two-tailed. Plaudittus is two-tailed. Betis, which is the most common, is a three-tailed nymph. So here's the one that all fishermen take and they start talking about. Okay, this is the Brachycentridae, and one of those species is Brachycentrus numerosus, and the name implies exactly what it is. These things can come out in incredible numbers. I've been driving through Titusville, around this time of year, and the whole town is just covered in, this caddisfly coming off. So I'd say it's the first major caddisfly hatch of the year for around here. So Brachycentrus, like I said, has species that are numerosus is a big one. And they'll try to take these on top sometimes, but if you don't see them taking on top, swing a wet fly, that type of stuff, they're probably taking stuff underneath. Either that or it's too cold and they're not doing anything, right, Tony? Sometimes it happens. It's a weird one, but yeah. So like I said, fish the nymph. Elk hair caddis is a good pattern for that. They're a little darker, I think, than maybe some of the other ones. There's my attempts at some elk hair caddis dries. And in Pennsylvania, there's 3 genera in this family of Brachycentridae caddisflies, and these are the 3 different types of 3 genera. So the first one, the one on top there to this over here, they look like a log cabin. It's that squared. If you look on Oil Creek and pick up any rock in Oil Creek or any of the bigger streams around here, you'll just see this. They'll just be loaded on the tops of rocks. And they sit there. They have these little bristles on their legs, and they're sitting there, and they're just sitting in the water. They filter feed minute particles, and then they basically eat off of their legs. Is how they feed. The other 2, Microcema and Atticropleps. Atticropleps is one of my favorite. It has pretty pretty small. Microcema will live in smaller streams. I don't really, you probably won't see it as like a hatch because it's not super numerous. Atticreflex isn't either. There's only one species of Atticreflex in Pennsylvania. It's Atticreflex hitchcocki, and it lives in like real springy headwater streams with like moss or liverwort in it. And there's a few streams around here that I've found them in. They're probably more numerous than you think. You're just not looking for them, but they're pretty cool looking.
Is that the bottom one?
Yeah, the bottom one. I'm sorry.
Okay.
The medium, the one in the middle is microceme, and the bottom one, Atticreflex, almost looks like the same case as Brachycentrus, but it's much smaller, as you can see. And they got these little filaments of wood coming out.
Like a stick one.
Yeah. So they got these little filaments of wood. I don't know how the heck they make them like that, but they do. So now we're getting into the, the big time hatches that everybody talks about. And so this would be late April. This one is the Hendrickson. So this is an ephemerella. It's actually ephemerella silvaria, and that's what they look like. Okay, so tie some pheasant tail with different blotches of darker and lighter, and you'd have ephemerella silvaria there. So that, I'd say that's the first major mayfly hatch. And boy, these things come off like on cool overcast days when there's a drizzle or something, and they don't last very long. It could be midday. They're pretty good sized mayfly. I'd say tie these in size 14. And trout really key on these things. I've seen trout just go absolutely bananas for an hour or two when it happens. So just so we have the nymph in the middle there, and there'd be the female spinner. So how do I know it's a female? It's got little tiny eyes. Okay. You got the male done right here. How do I know? It's got these big bulgy eyes. Don't ask me why the females have small eyes and the males, I guess, I don't know why, but I'd have to AI that one and Google it and find out. And then you have this would be the hardened dun, so like it just came out and it's drying off, and then you have right before this would be the other like an emerged dun. So yeah, they can look quite different between once they emerge and once they're done, in the spinner stage. So all the adult Ephemeralidae, so there's a lot of major hatches in that family. These are the sulfur hatches, Ephemeralidae, same thing. One good thing to note for fishermen, if it has if the adults have 3 tails, it's not a Hendrickson, it's not a Heptageneid, which I'll talk about later. It's an Ephemeralidae in that family. So you got your Ephemerella, you got your Hendricksons, and your what's the other one? It's coming up. Huh?
Cool gardens?
Nah, I'll get to it later.
Mushroom.
So these are all the Ephemeralidae. The adults are 3 tailed, and the legs are smoother on these. You can see they're kind of smooth looking and more spindly, and they're never striped. Okay. So, and remember those 3 things, because when I get into some other hatches, well, here's the other one. So here's March Brown, that's what I was thinking.
Right.
So this is the other major one. This is in a completely different family than the Hendrickson. So the Hendricksons are Ephemeralidae, always a 3-tailed adult, whereas now you have Macaphritium lacarium, or the March Brown. So this is a big, meaty fly. This is like size 12 mayfly, and I tie these. When I tie these, they have a big profile. I like to use wood duck wings that have a big, huge profile. Every time I tie them, I think, man, it looks too big in the vise. And then I go out and fish in March Brown hatch. I'm like, man, these things are way too small. So anyhow, it's just what happens. But there's a great picture of a March Brown there. And here's the nymphs. Okay, so those are what, like when you fish pheasant tail nymphs, that's what you're fishing. Those guys right there, March Brown. Size 12 pheasant tail would be the nymph. And you can see, look how different the spinner looks than the dun. I mean, that's incredible that that's the same, the same fly. But all Heptageneiddae, that family, Ephemeralidae has 3 tails. All Heptageneiddae has only 2 tails. So it's got two tails. You know, it's not like Hendrickson's or something like that. It'd be, and all the Heptageniidae hatches, they have these really striped legs. Okay, so that's a really easy telltale sign that you can at least get it pretty close to which one you're looking at. Oh, yeah. So here's the underside of. There's a lot of different genuses of Heptageniidae, and you know, different ways. You've got to look at the way the gills are, the striping of the abdomen, and all that. So Macaphretium, he's a famous entomologist, and this genus used to be called Stenonema, and then Macaphretium did all these studies and split them out, and he named the genus after himself, which made me really ticked off because I hate it when people split different genuses off. But he named it after him instead of Stenonema. So the one on the left is still the genus Stenonema, and the one on the right is now Macaphretium. Okay, so this is what all the fly fishermen all year wait for, right? The sulfur hatch. And yeah, these are pretty small, size 14 to 18s, and there's, you know, two of the biggest ones are Ephemerella invaria and Ephemerella dorthea, and they're I can't remember which one is a little bit bigger than the other, but I'd say size 14 to 18. I mean, sometimes you can even go 20. But there are so many different species of these guys coming off between May and like through June and July. I mean, there's so many species and you know, genera. With a lot of these things, again, as a fisherman tip, I wouldn't be afraid to throw a sulfur emerger. So there's just some of my different sulfur patterns. And you can see that's, you know, one of them matching it there. But there's my emerger tie right there. So that would be coming up before it popped onto the surface to hatch out as an adult there. So that's kind of my emerger pattern. It's worked pretty well for me. Yeah. Okay. So the sulfurs. You know, again, when you're talking fishermen, they just say it's sulfur, but it is. You're talking about these are all the different genera that are in Pennsylvania, and then with these genera, there's many different species. So you could be, when you say sulfur, you could be talking about 50 different species over several months, and they're all, you know, different looking. I mean, this is Eurylophila, so it has these. You see right here, those are what's called operculate gills. So that's how you tell that genus. And the gills actually sit on top of the body as opposed to a lot of the mayflies and stuff where the gills will be on the sides. But these guys, a couple of their gills are actually sitting on the top. And these are much smaller. These would be your size 18 sulfurs right on the left here. Those are your Ceratella and Pelagonopsis. So those are much smaller sulfurs. And then, of course, this is the big one, granddaddy of them all, Ephemera gutulata, or the green drape. I mean, when these things come off, it's like, and when they're coming off big, I mean, that's every fly fisherman's dream to see a big hatch of these. And these things are real clumsy. They come off and they're like bouncing all over the surface, and trout are just hammering them. And it's a really large mayfly. And this is another one that I tie. And then I tie it. I'm like, man, it looks so big. And then I'm fishing it, and it's the smallest fly out there. So you can't tie these things too big. Size 6 and 8. Late May emergence. The streams around here, around Memorial Day, I'll see it. Maybe first couple days of June. And it doesn't take many of these. I fished them on small streams where ephemera, where the green drape nymph lives. And you only need to have a couple of them bouncing around, and it just gets the fish going. And that's how I fish a lot of them when I just see the duns. You know, when they're first emerging, I'll just throw out some, you know, big and just skip skip it across the water, and make it look real clumsy, and it really you can really do good on that. So here's the green drake. Excuse me, green drake. So the first stage, the dun, real dark, wing looking. And I'm sorry, no. This is the second molt. Okay, so this would be the spinner, or they call it the coffin fly. All right, so that's the imago stage, and then the green drake was so you see that's the green drake done, and then there is the spinner, and they call it coffin fly. These guys, yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the done, then the spinner, and these guys usually, you'd be sitting there, and then it's pitch dark, and then they come down. And so you might be fishing this one late at night. I remember the first time I hit has anybody seen the green drake catch on Penns Creek? That's a sight to see. I mean, even if you aren't a fisherman, you just can't even believe just billions of these flies, these mayflies that are this big, just going upriver. And then it's like 10, 11 o'clock at night, and they're just, and they hit the water, and the fish are just going crazy. And if you're lucky enough to catch a fish, first time I fished at 2 o'clock in the morning was the first fish I caught, and it was just puking up green drakes, it was just so stuffed, and they're still feeding. So there's my attempt to. I actually got the privilege of fish for giant brook trout in Labrador. There was the match in the hatch there. That is a big fly, and that's the nymph right there. And so those are the burrowing mayflies, so they actually burrow in silt, and then the nymphs can stay in there for a couple years. So unlike most other mayflies, stoneflies, or mayflies and caddisflies that only have a 1-year life cycle, these guys have a 2-year life cycle. A 2-year life cycle, and then the actual last stage lasts about an hour, which is pretty amazing. And so let's try. I was diving somewhere, and I lifted up a rock and found this guy.
That's a good picture.
Yeah. So they're pretty mobile. Okay, so getting into June. So this is an entire different family from the Baetis that we call blueing olives. And this is the Jurnella, and this is in the family Ephemeralidae, so completely different family. So this is a blueing olive. This hatch is really cool. I mean, you can set where this mayfly lives, you can set your watch that it's going to be early morning, first week of June, preferably cloud cover, and it's going to have to go from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. It's pretty amazing. If you know a couple streams that have this, every year it's amazing how consistent it can be. It's a pretty good size mayfly, maybe size 14, maybe 16, and you can have a very heavy emergence on it. And the nymph's pretty cool. It looks like the front legs on it's always like this, and looks like kind of a bodybuilder, and it's got these little protruding things like projections or points coming off of them. You can't see it in that picture, but yeah. And this is kind of neat. I just took that off. That's the egg mass ball there. So they'll just come in, get down, eggs, go down into the thing. And there's I just tie a compare done for this one. That's my rendition of matching the hatch there. Just a simple compare done. So let's see, this is me hitting a Jurnella hatch in first week of June here. That picture doesn't do it justice, but I'm telling you, it was amazing how many flies were coming off there. And then as you'll see, they'll be high up, and then as the morning goes on, they'll just get lower and lower and lower, and then they're all in the water, and then it's over. again, here's another major hatch in June. I see this a lot up in north central PA. This is Epeorus vitreus. And this one, again, is in the family Heptageneidae, which is the same as the March Browns. And why do I know that? Some of the keys are two-tailed adult, striped legs. Okay, completely different genus as the March Brown, but those characters are pretty true. And Epeorus is a gorgeous, gorgeous as a nymph. So, like I said, most most stoneflies have two tails. I said most mayflies before, nymphs have three tails. This is the only Ephemeralidae, and other than a few betids, it's the only mayfly that has two tails as a nymph. Okay, so if you're picking stuff and you see a mayfly under a rock, and it's got two tails, it's Epeorus. So this is a very pollution intolerant species of mayflies. For my job, we use a scale called the Hilsenhoff Biotic Index, and it measures how sensitive different insects are to pollution. It's a scale from 0 to 10, and this is measured for organic pollution. So 10 is very pollution tolerant, 0 is very pollution intolerant. Epeorus are 0. So these guys are extremely intolerant. So your ligochetes and your leeches and things like that are 10s. This is 0. So if you got these in your stream, which a lot of streams around here do, mostly smaller ones, that means it's a very clean stream. So again, clear wings, spinner, and that one over there is the dun. So looks like completely different everything, but that's the same. And then another Epeorus. So again, two-tailed nymph, three-tailed adult. This is Epeorus pluralis. So again, like I've been saying all night, and, the adult Heptageneidae are two tails, and then all Heptageneidae nymphs are three-tailed except Epeorus, which is two-tailed. And this is an early spring emerger. I actually saw this guy a couple weeks ago. I wasn't completely sure, so I asked my buddy who's a consultant in Massachusetts and a fishing buddy who's actually really good at this stuff. And he told me it's a Quill Gordon or Epeorus pluralis. It can be locally abundant, small to mid-sized streams. The underside of it's olive. If you're trying to match the hatch for this one, and again, Epeorus, again, like I said, a very pollution-sensitive group of insects. Absolutely, I mean, one of my favorite nymphs. It's just a gorgeous-looking thing. So this is I would say not a major hatch. It almost looks like a March Brown, but this is a chunkier, a little bit smaller, really meaty mayfly. And I was fishing in north central PA on Crossfork Creek one day, just going up and just throwing stimulators for brook trout. And I look down and I see this on the rock, and I'm like, but that's weird. A Baetisca, which you don't see very often. It was just sitting there, not moving or anything. And then I looked again, and it starts doing this, and then this, and then that within like 45 seconds. And I do have a video of it, but I couldn't. It was too big to download for presentation. But it's pretty neat to watch that. The back of that carapace there just split, and then the wings within 45 seconds, wings were out, and it was sitting there drying off. But it was, to me, this is the coolest looking mayfly of them all. Baetisca, you'll see them never abundant, see them in small streams. Everybody know where Porcupine Creek is around here, Venango County? There are pretty good numbers of those in that stream. But yeah, stunning looking mayfly. So I'll just switch a little bit to some of the different caddisflies, and so like probably one of the more known well, two of the more known ones, this is probably number 2, is the Rhycopola. So there's a lot of different, there's only one genus of Rhycopola, and that's Rhycopola that's in Pennsylvania, and there's only one other genus that's in the whole Northeast. But they're fairly common. There's several different species. The one you normally would see in streams is it's a really big caddisfly when it's in the stream. It's real green. It's got really bright head patterns. This is Rhycopola fuscula, and it should be real green, but it was in alcohol, so these ones are all colored. Their colors are down on them. But the first two are actually Rhycopola fuscula, and these guys are, most caddisflies you think of them in a case and stuff. These guys are actually free living. They got this big, huge, massive anal claw that can, crawl around on rocks and eat stuff and hold on to things. So this is a free living caddisfly, and there's the adult just coming off, real green bodied, which fishermen call them green caddis. So if you see caddis, green body, probably a Rhycopola. Another one, this one is really common in Sugar Creek. So that's Rhycopola melita. I see them in a couple other places, but nothing like I do in Sugar Creek. And if you could see that just as it came out of the water, it would be very green, and then it has these black or really dark blotches on each abdominal segment. So pretty cool. And then the one on the bottom is more common. It's Rhycopola. There's Ledra, Minora. There's a couple different species. They're more like what you think in cold headwater streams or kind of acidic streams you'll see them. I guess that's a decent picture of Rhycopola fuscula on the left there. Before that root alcohol and killed it. And then, so this is when people think of caddisflies and caddisfly hatches and big numbers of caddisflies coming off, they're probably seeing Hydrocychidae. This is without a doubt the most common caddisfly. Most caddisflies just look brown, which is why everybody just fishes an elk or caddis, because that's what most caddisflies look like. Now these guys they don't construct any cases, but they're called net spinning caddisflies. So if you ever lift rocks in a stream, you'll see all these like spider web looking things about this big, like attached to different things, rocks. And behind every one of them will be a Hydrocychidae. And what they do is, they just let particles go onto the net, stick, and then they devour the net, make another one, and do it again. So in the different genera, you have Parapsyche, which is very small cold headwater streams. That one on the top, the thing's huge. And then below it is the same as these two. So that one's actually Macrostemum zebrotum. So these are big green looking Hydrocychidae. They live in like the biggest rivers we have around here, like the Allegheny River. These things come off in massive numbers. And there's the adult right there. Their antenna is probably like twice as long as their body, and they're a pretty big sized caddisfly. I've seen them come off on like middle Allegheny in just massive numbers. Their pollution tolerance, these things can handle organic pollution, so like, more nutrient rich streams, you just get huge numbers of this family of caddisflies, with the exception of this one right here, they all look the same, I know, but it's just why you have to key them out with a microscope. You actually have to look at the gular structure, which is the throat, and it has different patterns, and that's how you tell the genus. But Diplectrona is, I mentioned that Hilsenhoff biotic index from 0 to 10. These guys are another 0. So if these guys would live with Epheoris, they'd be in the same type of streams as Epheoris should be. And Macrostemum zebrotum, which I said lives in the Allegheny River, their head, you can see, it looks like somebody chopped off the top of their head. I mean, it's completely flat on top, so they're really easy to identify. And that's the only species in that genus. So just as sort of an aside, I don't know if these are like really big hatches. These will occur in either like larger rivers or wetlands, but they're really neat. I just wanted to demonstrate like the different case-making ability of some of these caddisflies. I mean, you have Myostacides on top, Trinodes, Acetus, Setodes, and then Serraclia. And the cases are just, I mean, unbelievable. These pictures don't really do it justice. I mean, if you saw them under scope, it's just amazing. And in the left picture, you have 3 different, probably species of Serraclia. I mean, why some of them make them out of plant material, their case, and others make them out of little teeny tiny stones is I have no idea why, but they're really neat looking. And these are called the longhorn caddisflies. So the adults have really long antennae. So if you see these things bopping around in the Allegheny River in the middle of summer, that's probably some species of Leptoceridae, and it's probably Acetus, which would be the most common one.
Joe?
Yeah.
There's one I see on Sugar Creek a lot. It's a really big stone case caddis.
Mm-hmm.
Any idea what you? Because they're fairly big.
Does it look like any of those?
Well, I think if you flip back.
Oh. Oh, you think it's one of these? So these are all made out of wood.
Okay.
These are all wood or plant material.
Okay, I was looking at the top one up there.
Yeah, no, that's actually, it probably wouldn't be Myostacides. I would say that's more of a wetland type or large river species. Yeah, it does look like it might be some stone, but most of that's wood there. I'd have to see it.
I'll catch one.
Do it. I'll tell you what it is. So then, some more caddisflies, and I did a lot of my graduate research on caddisflies, so they're just amazing, the different cases they make. I mean, here you have there's 4 different families here. This one I just wanted to show you. That case is exactly like a snail shell. Okay, it's all spiral. It's hard to see, I have it turned upside down. And that's Helicopsyche. You'll see that the little tiny black caddisflies in the middle of summer. You'll see them coming off in big numbers. Helicopsyche. The one on top is Gurea, and then Glossosoma, which is the turtle shell case, because it kind of looks like a turtle shell. And then Neophylax, which is, I'll talk about that in a little bit here, for Unionidae. But yeah, and then, the stoneflies, they get a lot of attention. Most of them, to me, aren't like, other than the salmon fly, the big Pteronarctos fishing it out west. I mean, I don't know, they're certainly don't attract fish as much. And I think a lot of it is because the stoneflies, they don't like emerge out and lay on the water. They crawl to the rocks and then, go out. And they don't really, then they're kind of like, don't really come back to the stream a whole lot. I don't see tons of stoneflies ever on the water. But there's a couple really cool ones, obviously, the salmon fly or the, Pteronarctos, and then the golden stones, which are fairly common. There's several different genuses, Aponeria, Paragnatina, and Agnatina. So May to June emergence usually, so you can fish the golden stone or the big black stone. I think these patterns are much better fished underneath than trying to match the hatch with them. And then, middle of summer, you get the micro mayflies, the Trichorthodes and Cenis, or the trichohatch. These are like size 20 to 26. You'll see in like August, they'll be like these big emergence like next to a riffle, and then, they'll come down and all hit the water, and you get the trout going. Cenis is super common. One of the most common mayflies probably in Oil Creek. Really common mayfly. So the way you can tell, and I said, remember before when I said the one Ephemerellidae had operculate gills? Well, these 2 families of mayflies also have operculate gills. The way to tell the difference is these ones are rounded and that one is triangular. So if it's a triangular operculate gill, it's Trichorthodes. If it's more rounded, it's Cenis. But yeah, you'll see these ones probably in, a lot of times when I'm on Oil Creek and I can't catch anything, I'm like, I bet these things are coming off and you can't even see them because they're just so small. And then middle of summer, on the big rivers or out on Lake Erie, you ever see how they put Doppler radar and they see these hatches? These are what they call Canadian sailors, or these are the big hexagenias or hex hatches. I think out in the Delaware River, they have big hex hatches. Allegheny River, they certainly come off. Big, huge mayfly, bigger than the green drakes. So the difference between Hexagenia and Ephemerella, even though they're both in the same family. So if you find this looks just like the green drake, right? But the green drake they have what's called a bifid process there. So there's like 2 points that come out, whereas this process that comes out above his mandible is more rounded. You can't really see it there, but that's the difference, how to tell in the dichotomous key between those two genuses. And then here's your October caddis. This is kind of the end of it for the year, right? You get the stick-cased ones. That's Pycnopsyche or Hydatophylax. And then the somewhat smaller ones would be, your what do you call them? Tan caddis, right? Is that what they call them? Tan caddis? What is that? What's that hatch? October caddis.
Just
Yeah.
I always think of the bigger one.
Yeah. Well, the big one's big. I mean, it's like that. I always see the
and then the smaller ones.
Yeah.
There's a good hatch of those on sugar.
Yeah. I mean, these things are super common. They're super common everywhere. I mean, you'll pick up any rock in any stream around here, and you'll see that's all their cases.
So Joe, is that the cinnamon caddis we see like in October?
Yeah. So cinnamon, tan, October caddis. Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
They're almost.
But it's Neophylax cincinus, and then you're consistent.
That's like almost like size, like a 10 or an 8 even.
Well,
I mean,
for
one.
Pycnopsyche it is. October caddis, the Unionides probably size 12, 14.
Okay.
It's much smaller. Yeah. So that's probably the last major hatch of the year. And when fish are coming up to them, it'd be during the nicest time of the year, or the time of the day. Other than, which is probably mid-afternoon if you get some sun or something like that. Nice October day. Just some other ones, other aquatic insects that you'd see. There's 3 other ones. In the Megaloptera, there's Corydalis, which is, Helgermite. Everybody knows that one. So there's the male on top and the female on bottom there. These things are huge. If you're floating French Creek or the Allegheny River in the summertime, and you see all these white splotches all over the bridges and stuff, that's their egg cases. So what happens is that they crack out of those and just fall right down into the water. And
I sent you a picture last year. I don't remember that.
yeah, you're like, what the heck is this? Yeah. So that's what you'll see. I guarantee if you float under a bridge in the Allegheny River, you'll see those. So that's the egg masses of those. And then you have Cialis, which could be mistaken kind of for caddisfly adult, but it's real black. His wings are more tent-like than other caddis. And then you have the Nigronia, which looks exactly like the Helgermite immature, just a little bit smaller. So Nigronia would live in smaller to medium-sized streams, whereas Corydalis lives in bigger streams and rivers and stuff. And Cialis lives in AMD streams. It's one of the few species that does well in an AMD stream. But one. So just some other ones, midges always. Antoka, that hatch can be really good on Spring Creek and other limestone streams. Hydroptilid caddisflies, those are the microcaddis. They're just so diverse. There's for instance, I found during my graduate research, I found 27 species of hydroptilid in the watershed I was looking at, and these things are like size 24 or 26, tiny. You ever see the lime green stoneflies in the summer? Those are chloropurlids. Perlotids are the yellow Sally, and then black flies. Here's my imitation of black fly pupa actually coming up. So these guys grab an air bubble and pop up to the surface. One quick story: I was fishing in Montana, and fish were we couldn't touch anything. So my buddy catches one, stomach pumps it, loaded with black flies, just packed with black flies. And So we go back to the cabin and we have nothing to match, we have some stuff type flies. We do best we can to match, what they looked like, from the stomach pump, and we just slaughtered them the next day. I mean, it was just one of the best days ever. So next year, go to Montana, I have like 100 of these tied up. Never caught a fish. So it was just, just a timing thing.
So, as little as they are, did you go like dry dropper with those?
No, I just nymph fishing.
Just nymph
Like
fishing.
2 of them.
Huh.
It was just like fishing in hatchery. It was unbelievable. I don't know what happened, but it was amazing.
That's nice.
Yeah. So, and that's it.
So there's a hatch that fish, in central PA. Not here so much, I haven't seen it, but we call it a white fly. So you see on Susquehanna, you see on
So that's
beaches.
E4 on. I did put it up there. It was in those ones in the spider web. They huge hatch on French Creek.
Do they?
So that's E4 on Lucon.
Is that
So that's-
mayfly then?
Huh?
Is it mayfly then?
Yeah, that's the white fly.
Yeah.
White fly hatch. So E4 on Lucon. So that's in the same group of mayflies. There's 3 families of burrowing mayflies. You got the green drapes, which are the, and then you got the hexes.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, you got the green drapes, which are Ephemeridea. Then you got Potamanthidae, which are another group of burrowing mayflies with tusks, and they come off in French. And then you got the Ephoron, which is another group of burrowing mayflies. Those things are real. It's amazing, like.
And don't forget that name, Joe.
Yeah, right.
Ephoron Lucon. So you don't see, like, the nymphs are really hard to find, and like they're only around for like, they usually come off what?
Third week of August.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, Yellow Breeches Creek. Yellow Breeches has a, yeah.
I mean,
And
you off your prick, your waders are full.
I was coming across the Susquehanna in Harrisburg one time, and it looked like a blizzard.
Smallmouth. too.
And and I stopped, just to see. I've fished it out there, or been there with a spinning rod fishing. When it happened. And but anyhow, yeah. And the amazing thing about those is the nymphs you don't see, like they're only around, like they seem to develop really quick. They're like in the egg stage all the time, then they just develop, and then
Very quick.
they hatch out, and within an hour
Yeah.
they went from boom, molded, and bam, dead.
So
Yeah.
many flies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an incredible one to see. Yeah, I didn't mention it, but the one picture I had of the spider's web, that was on French Creek. I was
Interesting.
fishing for bass the next morning. I'm like, dang, the white fly hatch must have happened last night.
Okay.
And there were still fish rising to them the next morning.
So like in Central PA, it's gonna be about the same time.
Yeah, I would say mid to late August. It's hard to hit because it's like 20. If you're not there that night, it's not going to happen the next night, or if they don't start like the green drapes. Like everybody knows when it starts and it goes along builds up for a week or 2. These things are, you wouldn't see one the night before on French, and then the next night they're just covered, and then that's it. So yeah, that's a cool one.
Question I have is,
That's a cool one.
when mayfly hatches, they tend to move up the stream?
Yeah, so right. So I mentioned the hatch would start lower, like the green drapes. That's why everybody knows how to be on, especially with social media now. Like, the green drapes just started 30 miles downriver, and then so you're trying to time, like, it could take a week or 2. They all go up, and then they're merging, and then it just keeps going up and up for Penns Creek, 30, 40 miles.
Yeah.
But yeah. Yep, you'll see that emergence, upstream. So, yeah.
What was the name of that author of the aquatic entomology book?
Oh, McCafferty. Yeah. Yeah, it's McCafferty. So I think it's a fisherman's guide to aquatic entomology, and it's really. I should have brought it. It's really good. I mean, it's really. Like, it's not real technical, and it is technical, but it's not technical. Like, he does a really good way of saying, okay, here's Heptagenidae, here's different genuses, but this is real, this is what they are.
Worth a look.
It's a great book. It is a great book. Yep. Well, yeah.
For the start. stoneflies, can they come in different colors, or do they change color as they start to molt?
Like, is there, no, I mean, they're pretty much like, if you see, like a Terranarsis, okay, that's the big black stone, they're like huge. I mean, when I see them like this big, you know, when they're done, they're a 2 to 3 year life cycle in the water. And when they look like this and when they look like this, they look exactly the same.
We were doing some macro surveys in Oil Creek, and it almost looked like albino stoneflies.
Yeah, so they would be, right, so they would be going through a mold.
So that's through a molt.
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, I got you, yeah, I know what you mean, yep. Yeah, you'll see them, and they're, you'll actually, it's almost like a crayfish, it's like,
Kind of soft.
yeah, like softer a little bit. I imagine they're pretty vulnerable at that point. But yeah, you're right, you'll see them, that light color, almost like albino, like you said, yep, exactly. Those are probably like, the pearlids, the big golden stones you were seeing,
Okay.
because there's a lot of those in Oil Creek.
It wasn't huge, but it was definitely not a small.
Yeah, yep, it was probably going through one of their several instars that they would through their life cycle.
Yeah, Joe, when I say in Oil Creek,
Mm-hmm.
that's the #1 number of nymphs that you'll get in a seine.
Yeah. Did you ever try to fish the golden stone in Oil Creek? I have, and I don't get anything with it.
I thought about it, they said.
Really?
I only
Like,
fished
what
the
the
nymph.
heck? I mean, that's what I'm fishing with.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I tried.
Must have a bad golden stone. Well, because
Yeah.
there's pearlids, the big ones, but then there's lots of perlodids, which look just like pearlids, but they're much smaller. And there's a lot of genus of those guys.
Okay.
Isopearl is yellow Sally. I mean, that looks like it looks like an acronaria that's pearlid, but it's just smaller. There's just so many different. Yeah, really common.
A friend of mine was fishing the kind of the lower end of Sugar Creek in June, and he said they got driven off by the hatch of yellow salads.
Were
Right.
fish
He
taking
said
them?
it was just like being in a twilight zone.
Were fish taking them?
He didn't say.
Yeah.
He just said they were everywhere, up their sleeves and
Yeah.
you know in their eyes.
I mean, those little lime-looking ones, I've seen them come off so heavy, like in north central PA streams. I've never seen them on the water, and I never see any fish taking them.
And did you say them are stonefly family or caddis family?
Which one?
The yellow,
Those are stoneflies. Psychoptera, yeah, stoneflies.
I see them on Cather's Run a lot.
Yep, Cathers is a good
That's
one.
pretty, yeah.
That's a nice diverse stream. I've surveyed that one, yep.
I know she didn't mention anything about the Cahills. You don't see a lot of Cahills around here, but I've seen them over on the North Fork over in Brookville. Pretty strong there.
What are do you know what Bob's Cahills are?
It's a large cream.
No, I know, I know, yeah, I know Lake Cahill. I'm guessing it's some kind of ephemeralidae like
I thought the Cahill was kind of out of that March brownish.
okay, so it's a heptageniid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe just a color
Next time you look, see if it has striped legs, it would be in that family of heptageniids like the March Browns.
Yeah.
But if it has nice, like smoother, like non-colored legs, it would be in the family of ephemeralidae, which is more like the sulfurs and that group of mayflies. But yeah, I know when you say Lake Cahill, I know that's a very popular fisherman term, but I guess I'm not familiar with.
Yeah.
If we had that McCaffrey key book, it's pretty cool because you could say, okay, Lake Cahill, and they would tell you which one.
The one up on the top, Joe. Wouldn't that'd be a McCaffrey right? Because of the speckled leg?
Yeah. Yep.
And two tails?
Two tails. Yeah,
Or maybe
sometimes
one-
these pictures
maybe
are
one's
broken
missing
off.
there.
Yeah. But that, I mean, it would have two tails though, because that's a heptageniid.
Yeah, because I know I sent a picture of one of those to you last
Yeah.
year, and you were like,
I had
Come on, Tony.
to consult with my buddy in Massachusetts on that one because it was just a small. It wasn't it was in the Allegheny. It was probably a nondescript hatch, like just a species that you don't see very often. But it was a heptageniid because it had that stripe.
Yeah.
And it had two tails. So yeah, I would take that. There's a really good mayfly book. I think either Orvis put it out. It's just this little tiny thing. It's about this thick, and it goes like through like if it has two tails, and then if it has striped legs, and then you can really get down to like what everything is like pretty pretty quick. But, yeah.
You surveyed Mr. Creek much?
Oh, yeah. Yep, I mean, we have a lot of aquatic insect studies, surveys on that stream. I mean, that's a very diverse, it's got everything on it. It's kind of, it's kind of interesting because it has, all the streams coming into it are nice cold headwater streams. So you'll get bugs from those streams kind of drifting in there, and then but it's also a warm stream, so you'll get, the more bigger stream type of insects too. So yeah, a lot of diversity. I mean, most of the stuff I talked about up here today are in China. Yeah, yeah. I mean, most of that stuff is there. It has it has a huge granum caddis patch, for sure. And then yeah, it'll have sulfur. It'll have all the mayflies and all that. But, yeah, that's a good one. And all the trips come in and are good too. Yeah.
Question on crawfish. So you're
On
talking
what?
about molting and crawfish?
Yeah.
So the molting on crawfish, is that once annually or does that continue through the summer? Because you see it the first week of June,
Yeah.
but
I'm gonna say they probably go through one molt a year.
that's what I thought.
But I don't quote me on that.
Well, it's,
I'm kind of guessing.
Yeah.
I'm not a crayfish.
I got a question about the mussels. Okay, so you're talking about
Oh, now you're talking.
French
I'll talk all night
Well,
now.
just something I thought about when we started was what makes French Creek so different that you would have all that there, that
Well, I
much
think-
diversity.
I think what happened is when the glaciers melted, okay,
Mhm.
so you had all these different species, and then they retreated. So you kind of got species from up north and from the south. So we're kind of like in that middle. And so a lot of species that you'll see like in the real good rivers of Tennessee and that are also up in the north too. And so French Creek's sort of sitting in that middle. Plus it's just where it sits, it's kind of like, and mussels kind of like that agriculture
Oh,
type.
yeah, yeah.
They like nutrients because they're filter feeders. And so just the perfect conditions. Plus a lot of these other rivers and stuff, like the Clarion, probably had an incredible mussel diversity, but it got completely wiped out. And mussels aren't very mobile. They're not going to be flying to another stream. So the Clarion River just, it's going to take, eons to come back. And we're stocking in Clarion.
I was just going to ask. Like,
Yeah, we do a lot of that. So we have Fish and Boat Commission has a hatchery now in Union City. And there's one down in West Virginia, Lake Sulphur Springs. And so they raise Glaucidia, or the real juvenile mussels. And then, so we've been working with transplanting some of these species that were here 150 years ago before the Industrial Revolution, bringing them back. French Creek got spared because there's agriculture and stuff, but there's really not a lot of industry. We didn't have,
yeah.
we had deforestation, but we don't have mining.
Uh-huh.
Not a lot of oil and gas extraction. We don't have a lot of heavy industry like the Clarion. That's a paper mill up there.
Yeah.
And it just wiped that river out. E.O. Ortman, who's like the godfather of mussels, he said he called the Clarion the worst stream in the United States at one point. Like this was hundreds of years.
coal mining?
No, I mean there was some A&D in there, but a lot of that paper mill up there, and yeah, that really put a hurt on.
I was amazed. Like,
Now it's great. Clarion's great now. I mean,
yeah.
okay. And bug diversity and stuff. So, but yeah, we're sitting on one of the best mussel populations in North America, right 50 yards.
I know up at Cambridge Springs. I went up there.
Oh, it's
Small. That was unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, there's 27 species in French Creek. 23 of them you can get right under that bridge at Cambridge Springs.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
was it the most biodiverse streams?
Yeah, I mean, there's a raised species of fish. Funny though, like the bug life isn't super great because a lot of these insects. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's lots of bugs in it. It's diverse, but there's better streams. Whereas, like this is number one for mussels and fish. But a lot of the bugs, they follow that Hilsenhoff biotic index that I mentioned before with organic pollution and how things are. And a lot of these bugs in here are more tolerant of organic pollution. You won't find like E. purus in here, or some of the real sensitive stuff. They'll be It has a lot. It does. I shouldn't say that it's not as, but the mussels in the fish are the real big ones here. Yeah.
Supposed to go over towards Wharton and fish the Cinnamahoney this weekend if it doesn't rain. The Keystone Select.
Yeah. I've fished that many times.
I guess my question is, how do you guys determine the Keystone Select?
I don't work for the Fish and Boat Commission.
All right.
That's a fishery. I work for Department of Environmental Protection, so we're regulatory.
I didn't know they had input for it.
Yeah, I mean I think so. I know isn't there one on Oil Creek?
There's one on Oil Creek.
Yeah, I don't know how they
The
Shannon. Yeah, I don't know how they.
Does it like have to
was
meet
told-
certain standards or?
Close
What
to
I was
state
told
lines.
is it's close to state lines, other state
Well,
lines.
Really?
And if it's pristine water, so you're better water.
Okay.
It's Keystone Select, because
Yeah.
you're trying to pull people in from other
I
states.
think
It has
location,
a lot
yeah.
to do
I'm
with
thinking
that.
Yeah.
location like
That makes sense.
That's,
I mean, I'm sure it wasn't based on biology. I'll just say that
Okay.
it was based on some type of management decision, just like
Out of state
You know,
licenses.
a lot of people coming around. Something.
I thought it had to do with water quality.
Nah, because the Shannon.
diversity and
There's
stuff.
there's some real bad ones, and there's a
I
couple
think
in the Southwest that are not
I
good
think it
streams.
boils down to it's accessible and it sells more fishing licenses.
Yeah,
Yes.
probably access.
Yep.
Like Oil Creek, I mean, you can access the whole thing. Shannon, same thing.
Yeah, yeah.
The first fork, same thing.
First Fork's a gorgeous
Really
one.
good good access. So, yeah, I would say probably all those reasons right there. It wasn't based on any biology.
About the money.
It's always about the money, right? But yeah, it wasn't based on
You think
biology.
about Neshannock, you've got 79 right there.
Yeah.
And 80.
Yeah,
So
and they probably spaced them.
Yeah.
They didn't want to have two of them like right in the same spot. So they
Correct,
probably
yeah,
spaced them so the majority of Pennsylvanians could fish them. Because I know they're in every region, so yeah. It wasn't based on anything scientific. It's
I don't-
more
Is there
the almighty dollar.
I don't think there's a Keystone selected in Potter County, is there?
Well, only the first fork. I mean, but that's not
Oh,
Potter right
okay,
now.
okay.
That's not Potter though.
Yeah.
Oh no, yeah, Keystone. There's one in on Pine, Big Pine, right by my camp.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, Pine Creek.
In Ansonia. That's
Oh, I
Keystone.
didn't know,
Select.
okay.
Yep.
I mean, you also have the thing down at Slate Run, but that's
That's
different.
different. Yeah,
That's a big brown trout club.
yeah. That's all because of money generated from that store.
Mhm.
Yeah. Fish Commission stocks it too, but they don't stock.
Yeah.
Like they do their Keystone Select. Yeah. I want to know the scientific basis of why palominos are stocked somewhere and not others.
Hey, Joe.
I think
Yes. No money.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
they're wild, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Wild goldens.
Yeah. I caught one in October one time on Oil Creek
Oh, yeah,
on a dry fly on an October caddis.
on a dry fly.
Wow. You know.
Coming up.
How many
Ripple
have
and
you
North
got
Farm.
on a dry fly?
Probably that might be. I think maybe one other one.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's
Yeah.
kind of hard to do that.
Well, this one's been in. He's been in there all year. You had to, you know what I mean. You had to get smarter. Catch way more of them on green weenies and squirmy worms.
Warren?
That's just what I'm gonna say. Lauren, are you gonna bring your name up there?
Hey, I
really
appreciate
thought-
the crowd tonight. Great.